right, welcome everybody. It's Top 10 Thursday. Or no, wait, all right, yeah, Top 10 Thursday. Yeah, I'm kind of losing it today. The last one went up on today because I was working and had a few issues. But hopefully this one will get up on Thursday. So yeah, as always, I'm here with Mike Mustafa.
Hey,
We are going to go through the top 10 level 5 damage spells. So what did you think about when you started looking through this list?
my first impression of this list is that there's a lot more utility to the spells, but not necessarily higher damage compared to level 4, which is kind of underwhelming. But there are a lot of spells that can have implications outside of combat
Right. And
or
that's
doing different things in combat. So it's
yeah,
it's
and
kind of strange just because you expect when you get a higher level of spell, you're going to be dealing more damage, but that's not necessarily the case going from level
right.
4 to level 5.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think the utility for a lot of these spells is a lot higher. Again, it kind of sets you up for other things, to be able to restrain somebody that then, if it's the big baddie, all that kind of stuff, to help
For sure.
your party deal more damage.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm guessing that's where they were thinking about doing these spells. But there's still some cool ones in here.
Yeah, there's some very
Um,
cool spells for sure. Just the damage output is a little underwhelming,
yeah.
in my opinion.
Well, let's get into it, and we'll start off with your honorable mention, my man.
Okay. My honorable mention is a spell that I've never read before, but I can't wait to get to use it because it seems awesome. Transmute Rock. So it is an action to cast, has a 120-foot range, and you can choose any section of solid rock and up to a 40-foot cube of it and turn it into mud. So while it is mud, creatures that are in the area have to make a strength saving throw, and if they fail, they are restrained until they use an action to pull themselves free. It requires 4 feet of movement to move 1 foot through the mud. So you can turn a large section of the ground into a mud pit and give yourself a lot of time while they try to get themselves out of it. Additionally, you can target a section of a rock or stone ceiling into mud, and anything underneath that section, as the mud falls down on top of them, they make a dexterity saving throw or take 4d8 bludgeoning damage. Another fun interaction that I like is you could, if you need to get into a building, if that building is made of stone, you can just turn the wall into mud and then walk right in, which is definitely a cool interaction. Additionally, you can turn a section of mud back into stone, and anything in that area has to make a dexterity saving throw or be restrained as the mud hardens into stone around their feet, which is also cool utility. I think less good than turning stone into mud, though.
Yeah, I mean, you could trap people inside the wall. That'd be,
That's
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 the
very true.
only thing I
Yeah.
could think you could use it for. I
If you
mean,
can
I'll
get
see.
if you can get 2 people to cast the spell like back to back, you can like turn it into mud and then turn it back into rock, and so like the section of the floor turns into mud and they all sink in, and then it turns back into rock and now they're stuck there, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's something I noticed with a lot of these spells too, kind of with the utility of it. A lot of them have things like restraint, fear, like pulling or pushing away a little bit more.
Hmm.
So again, I think, like we said at the start, I think a lot of these spells are going to have more utility, deal the damage, and more utility later on. Um,
I wrote a lot more in my notes than I have in previous weeks.
yeah, well, I did too. I have like 3 pages, so we'll see if I
Yep.
stick to it.
Yeah.
My honorable mention is Maelstrom or Maelstrom, however you want to say that.
Maelstrom.
Maelstrom. It's a 120-foot range. I'm gonna put I wrote down the descriptions on these because they're just so fun. A swirling mass of 5 foot deep water appears in a 30-foot radius centered at a point you can see within range. Um, and then that area becomes, or that area has to be ground or a body of water. And until that spell ends, it's difficult terrain. My favorite thing about this spell, well, before I get into that, so a creature, they have to make a strength saving throw, and on a failure, they take 66 bludgeoning damage. Here's my favorite part of this. Okay, so if they fail it, they're going to take possibly 36 damage, which is really good. And then they're pulled 10 feet towards the center of that. So if you cast it and they're right there on the edge, the 5 foot, and they fail, now they're pulled into it, and now they're 15 feet away of difficult terrain. So that's what I thought was a really cool aspect of this spell. And I didn't want to put it on my honorable mention. I had like 5 different things. I was like, you know what, my list is just honorable mentions at this point.
Right.
But this one, it did more damage than like animate object, which I thought would have been a really cool one to have as
That
well.
was close for my honorable mention, yeah.
And then there was a holy sword, holy weapon, which I think is a great one. And I like the fact that you can, speak a word and it dispel the spell and it blows up. And that's cool. That was on my honorable mention, but this one just kind of beat it out because the damage. Because if we are talking about damage, did better damage than those 2.
For sure. And it's also a really cool visual in addition to having the utility.
Yes.
My number 10 spot is going to be Dawn. It is 1 minute concentration, 60-foot range, and it creates a 30-foot cylinder of light. Everything in the 30-foot cylinder makes a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, they take 4d10 radiant damage. And as a bonus action on each of your turns while the spell is up, you can move it up to 60 feet. So if your target is moving around a lot, you can just follow it and just every turn as a bonus action, bam.
My number 10 is Wrath of Nature. Me being a druid, it's a great spell. It's number 10, and it really actually was almost an honorable mention because you have to be in a forest or a wilderness environment for this to work. So it still does possibly, 48 damage total if you add the rocks and the trees that hit it. But it's a 120-foot range, and it's a 60-foot cube, and you just call on nature, and nature just brings the trees and rocks and the ground to life. The trees attack any enemy that comes within 10 feet of them, and that's where the first damage comes from, and they have to make a dexterity saving throw, or they take 46 slashing damage. And it's cool how they describe it. The slashing damage is whipping branches, just whipping around.
Yeah.
Your roots and vines, when they walk into that, they have to make a strength saving throw, or they become restrained until the spell ends. And then that creature can use his action or to try and break free. And it's a strength athletics check for that. And then the last part of this is, the rocks. And this is one why I think it did make my top 10, because they use that as a bonus action. So you can hit them with the tree, and then as your bonus action, the rock then comes loose and slings at him, causing 3d8 non-magical bludgeoning damage, which I kind of liked how they added that in, because if the creature is, resistant to non-magical bludgeoning damage, it's not going to do as much damage. But they also have to succeed a saving throw or fall prone on that. So there's a lot of real big utility for that if you're in that area. Oh, and it is 1 minute concentration. So I forgot about that part. But yeah, as long as you're in that environment, like a druid, like I could have used a swamp. I could have used part of the swamp for that. But if we were in the desert, there's no way I'm going to have this spell ready and equipped.
For sure. My number 9 is the first time that a paladin spell has shown up on my list, Banishing Smite. It is a bonus action, 1 minute concentration. On your next melee hit, you deal an additional 5d10 force damage to the target, which is huge damage. And after that damage is dealt, if the target has 50 or fewer hit points, they are banished for the, I believe it's 1 minute duration. So the reason that I have it at number 9, it's going to deal a lot of damage, and it's going to take a target off of the battlefield for the 1 minute that the banishment lasts. But the target that it takes off the battlefield is probably not going to be the most relevant target being that it has to have 50 or fewer hit points to be banished. So it can be very useful towards the end of combat. Once you've worn the biggest target down a little bit, you can send it away, clear out the rabble, and then come back to it. Or you can use it to send one of the smaller goons away and focus on the bigger creature in the fight.
All right. Well, my number 9 is Dawn. Everything you said, 100% agree with. The 4d10 radiant damage is amazing. They still take half as much if they succeed.
Yes.
So you're still, and that was another thing. A lot of these spells had the, if you fail this, and you get half as much if you succeed, because a lot of the 3 and 4 didn't have those. I mean, there still are some that don't.
I was going to say it becomes more prevalent the higher up in spell level that you go. But yeah, like Fireball is half damage, Lightning Bolt is half damage. I think Blight is half damage.
Yes, it is. But my thing is, it says a creature must also make the saving throw whenever it ends its turn. So if it starts its turn, it's going to take 4d10, but then at the end, when it ends its turn, it's got to roll it again. Does it take the 4d10 again?
It's not. So it's when you conjure the spell, and then at the end of each of its turns.
Okay. All right.
That's where the being able to move it 60 feet comes in really handy, because if they're not moving around, you just leave it where it is. Okay. My number 8 is Cloud Kill. It is 10-minute concentration up to 120 feet. So pretty much anywhere that you want, and it creates a 20-foot sphere of poisonous gas. Everything in that 20-foot sphere takes 5d8 poison damage. And I believe if they start their turn there, they also take 5d8 poison damage, pending the Constitution save. It is heavily obscured vision, and it also damages creatures that don't need to breathe. So any kind of undead, any like warforged or constructs. And then at the start of your turn, it moves 10 feet away from you. So the reason that I have it so low on the list is because you don't get to pick and choose who it deals the damage to. So if you have a party with heavy melee creatures, like you've got a monk and a rogue and a barbarian, it's not going to be super useful because it's going to deal that much damage to all of your guys as well. But it can deal a lot of damage. It's 10-minute concentration, so if you want to set it up as an ambush, that's a perfectly valid option, and it deals pretty solid damage every turn.
And that one was on my list, but I ended up it was number 10, but I ended up taking off because of that, because it constantly moves away from you. And your party can get hurt. So if you do cast it and everybody rushes you, now it's moving away from you, and it's gone. Then you break the concentration. I get that, but it was also 10-minute concentration, which I kind of was like, eh.
Yeah, but it's very much risk reward.
Yes, very much so. My number 8 is Flame Strike. It is 60-foot range, 10-foot radius, and a 40-foot high cylinder. It's just divine fire comes down from the sky onto that 10-foot radius, and any creature that's within that 10-foot radius has to make a dexterity saving throw, and on a failed, they take 46 fire damage and 46 radiant damage. So if you're fighting, to me, the upside to this is if you're fighting something that's resistant to fire, it's still going to take the radiant damage, or vice versa, depending. So it's still going to take some damage. The other thing that I thought was cool about this spell was when you level up, when you cast this spell using a spell slot of 6th level or higher, the fire or radiant damage, you get to choose which one goes up by 1d6. So if you do and it's resistant to fire, you just up the radiant damage.
For sure.
And pop it. So, and that's why it's number 8 on my list, and possible doing 48 damage total, the highest that it can. So that's not too bad.
Yeah. My number 7 is Enervation. I had a really hard time placing this one because it's got a lot of upside, but a lot of downside. It is an action to cast. It has a 60-foot range, and you target one creature. It is concentration for a minute. When you cast the spell, the creature makes a dexterity saving throw. If it succeeds on the dexterity saving throw, it takes 2d8 necrotic damage and the spell ends. That's pretty lackluster. However, on a failed saving throw, the creature takes 4d8 damage, and you can use your action every turn, similar to Witch Bolt, to do an additional 4d8 damage to the creature. Also, you regain life equal to half the amount of damage, regardless if it's succeed or fail the saving throw. So, I mean, if they make their dex save, then it's pretty bad for a level 5 spell. But if they fail it, you're going to be dealing a lot of damage and gaining back like 15, 16 hit points every turn is a pretty big swing in most fights.
Very much so. My number 7 is Emulsion. This one I thought about a lot. This one was low on the list and high on the list. Like, I moved it around a lot. And the reason is because it can possibly do 48 damage when you cast it, the highest. Then it can also do 24 more damage at the end of the creature's turn. So, I mean, if you look at it, it's going to do a total of what is that, 72, potentially 72 damage at, right after you cast it. So just on the initial cast. It's got a 90-foot range. Flames engulf the creature, causing it to, isn't this the one that it causes it to? Yeah, it should turn bright. Yeah, there it is. Sorry.
Yep.
It does turn bright. Yeah. So they have to make a dexterity saving throw, and on a failure, they take 8d6 fire damage, and then the target burns for the whole duration of the spell, shedding bright light for up to 30-foot radius, and dim light for an additional 30 feet. And then it takes half as much on a success. The other downside to this, there's so many saving throws that this creature gets at the end of its turn. So that was it, And at the end of its turn, if it fails, it takes 46. Then if it succeeds, the spell ends. The other cool thing about it is you can't just throw water on the person who's on fire. So it's, really cool. But yeah, that's really it. Downside is there's a lot of saving throws for the creature to have. It does great damage, but there's always that chance that they're going to succeed and you just, fucked it up.
They have to run really well, but yeah, it has huge damage potential.
Yeah.
My number 6 is Wrath of Nature. Same reason as Robert. You do have to be more or less in some kind of natural area, a forest, a swamp, something like that. So you can't use it very effectively in city combat or if you're inside of a dungeon. But the reason that I have it so high is, even with that downside that it's kind of situational depending on the environment, all of those abilities really stack up. Like if you are in the woods, this is going to be the best spell you can possibly cast. I mean, difficult terrain, you can restrain a creature, you can deal 3d8 plus 4d6 to
multiple
targets.
Creatures.
You can do the 4d6 to anything within 10 feet of a tree, and then you can throw a rock for 3d8 at one target. So it's definitely situationally good, but when it's good, it's great.
Yes, I will definitely
for a single spell slot. That's a really powerful effect.
My number 6 is Innervation. That was another one too. I was moving around a lot because of the risk reward, like you were saying. The one thing tough. I don't think you talked about,
It's tough to place.
It's a cool spell. I mean, I don't think that you talked about too was, oh no, you did. That was another spell I'm thinking of. Never mind. My brain is so off kilter. But yeah, everything you said, the 4d8 necrotic damage, and then being able to use your action just to deal that again. That right there is why it's number 6 on my list.
Yeah. The only, other than the fact that if they succeed on the saving throw, the fact that it takes your action to re-up the damage is not ideal. But I mean, an additional 4d8 damage every turn is
Oh, that's what it was. There was one
Worth
other
an
part of
action.
that we didn't talk about, that the spell ends if you use your action to do anything else, which is normal.
Right.
If the target is outside the spell's range, so if it moves outside the spell's range, it's going to end.
Yeah.
And or if it is in under total cover. So like there's three options there that if like, I mean, if you're playing, if it was Mike versus Robert and you knew I cast it on you, all you would have to do is be able to get away, get out of that 60-foot cone,
For sure.
or 60-foot to, get away from it and end it.
That said, a lot of monsters aren't necessarily well versed in how to avoid spells. So a lot of the time as a DM, the creature probably would not realize how to break the spell, which is something that I try to take into account when I'm.
But if you're fighting a human wizard or a drow wizard,
yeah, if you're fighting a spellcaster, then they're probably going to know what's going on. But my number 5 is Wall of Light. It is an action to cast, 10-minute concentration, and you can place the wall anywhere within 120 feet of you. It does have to be a straight wall, as far as I can tell. You can't do like with Wall of Fire, you can make it a circle. It creates a wall that is 60 feet long, 10 feet tall, 5 feet thick. The wall sheds bright light for 120 feet and dim light for 120 feet outside of that. Creatures in the area, when you summon it, make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, they take 48 and are blinded. On a success, they take half the damage and they're not blinded. Creatures that end their turn in the wall space take an additional 48 damage. And each turn, this is the really cool part compared to other wall spells, each turn you can make a ranged spell attack against a target within 60 feet of the wall as your action. On a hit, you deal 4d8 damage, and whether you hit or miss, the wall's length shrinks by 10 feet. So you like throw a section of the wall at a creature within range, which, 10-minute concentration, you get to use it 6 times, I guess, to shoot a beam out. But the fact that it provides light, it provides protection, and it has the ability to deal some serious damage.
That was on I took that off, and I think I took it off because the limited use of it, but it probably should be on my list somewhere because of the damage output it can do. My number 5 is Negative Energy Flood. Yeah, 60 possible total damage, potential 60-foot range. You just engulf, or these ribbons of negative energy just engulf this, the creature. They have to make a Constitution saving throw. On a failed one, they take 5d12 necrotic damage, or half as much on a success. My favorite part of this spell, though, and I had a lot. I was moving it back and forth, and I knew it had to be in my top 5. Was if you kill a target with this damage, it raises up as a zombie at the start of your next turn. Now, you don't have control of that zombie, right? But if you're far enough away from it and your party members know they're far enough away from it, it then pursues the creature that is closest to it. So if you can make sure that it's right next to whatever it is then going to attack. And here's the cool thing about it too. If by the time it's your turn and that zombie is almost dead and it's right next to another creature, you can cast it, hit the one creature for 5d12 damage, and then your zombie gets 5d12 temporary hit points.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you can make the zombie, even though they're not really that strong, if you use it for your full amount of spell slots, that zombie has the chance to, get, 180 temporary hit points? I mean, total, if you rolled perfectly. If you use it 3 times.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
yeah, so temporary hit points don't stack.
Oh, that's right, they don't stack, but still, so it could get 60.
If but if you time it properly, then you can it runs out of the 60 temporary hit points, do it again, it gets more temporary hit points, do it again, it gets like so. It's definitely a cool spell. It's an awesome visual. The fact that if you just completely cack a creature, brings the zombie up. I meant to put it on my list, and I'm going to be honest, I just plain forgot. I just straight up forgot.
You know, any necromancy spell is going to be on
Yeah.
my list.
It's such a cool spell, though.
Yeah.
My number 4 spell is Synaptic Static. Big fan of this spell. It is an action to cast. It has a range of 120 feet, and it creates a 20-foot sphere. Everything in that sphere has to make an intelligence saving throw. It cannot affect a creature with intelligence of 2 or less. On a failed save, they take 8d6, I believe, psychic damage. On a successful save, they take half the damage. In addition to the damage on a failed save, their thoughts become muddled for 1 minute. Anytime it makes an attack roll, an ability check, or a concentration check, you roll a d6 and subtract the number from whatever they rolled. So this has the potential, first, you can hit multiple creatures with it. So you can deal a lot of damage to several creatures. And you're probably, if you hit like 3 creatures, you're probably going to get 1 or 2 of them that fail to save. Cashew, settle down. Sorry.
Oh, you all good.
Additionally, like I said, anything that fails to save gets an automatic 1d6 off of all of their attack rolls, ability checks, and concentration checks. So if you do manage to hit one of the bigger bads in the fight, you give yourself quite a bit of protection, just making sure that it doesn't attack the rest of your party successfully. It's not quite as good as disadvantage, I don't think, but it's a cool spell. It's got a lot of flavor to it, and has a lot of utility.
I read it and I liked it, but yeah, I thought there's better ones than that, but you know, we disagree. Agree to disagree here. All right, so my number 4 is Destructive Wave. It's a 30-foot, and each creature you choose within, you can, I think if I read it right, you can choose each creature within that 30 foot. Maybe I'm wrong on this.
No, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, and you just strike the ground with your hands, and each creature within that cone has to make a Constitution saving throw, and they take 5d6 thunder damage as well as 5d6 radiant or necrotic damage. You get to choose between radiant or necrotic, and are knocked prone. On a success, they take half as much damage and are not knocked prone. I mean, it's that simple. I think because there's not much to it. It's literally it deals damage in your choice of radiant or necrotic damage along with the thunder damage. So
it is definitely a cool spell. It probably should have made my list, but like I said, with the kind of underwhelming amount of damage that some of these spells do, I kind of focused a little more on utility. My number 3 is, I've got a lot of love for this spell. I think it's really cool. Probably shouldn't be this high, but that's okay. Bigby's Hand. I love this spell.
I knew that was going to be on your list somewhere.
I love this spell. It's so much fun. It's even outside of combat, you can just do so much with it. It creates it's 1 minute concentration. You can place it anywhere within 120 feet of you, and it creates a giant magic hand. You can use it as a bonus action, during which you can move it up to 60 feet and choose a following mode. You can choose Clenched Fist, where you make a spell attack against a target within 5 feet of it. On a hit, you deal 4d8 force damage. You can choose Forceful Hand, which attempts to push a creature 5 feet plus 5 times your spellcasting modifier in any direction. I believe it's strength check to do that. Grasping hand, which allows you to attempt to grapple a target. And while the target is grappled, every turn you can have the hand crush it, dealing 2d6 plus your spellcasting modifier. Or interposing hand, which stays between you and a creature, provides you with half cover against it. It cannot move through the hand unless its strength is higher than the strength of the hand, which is 28. So not a lot of stuff is going to be able to move through it. And additionally, the hand itself has an armor class of 20 and hit points equal to your hit point maximum. So you can pop this giant hand onto the battlefield. You get to use it as a bonus action on every one of your turns, which means that you can save your action to cast another spell. And it's just got a lot of cool modes with a lot of really fun interactions.
Yeah, that was a potential to be on my list, but I knew it was going to be on yours somewhere. So instead of trying to match you, I was like, I'll let Mike.
It's just so much fun.
My number 3 is a Steel Wind Strike.
That was almost my number 3.
Yeah, it was a 30-foot range. The best part about this is you can choose up to 5 creatures that you can see within range and then make a melee spell attack against all of them. And on a hit, you deal 6d10 force damage, which, what have we always said? Force damage, not a lot of things are, resistant to it. My other favorite thing about this is you can then teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 5 feet of one of the targets you hit or missed.
Yeah.
So if you know this one over here, and when it gets its turn, it's going to hurt you, you can teleport to the one that you hit before and be next to him. Absolutely. That way, this is the little goblin. He's not going to do much damage that Tiamat's going to do.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a cool spell. I wanted to put it on here. I couldn't find room for it, unfortunately.
I get it.
My number 2 is Immolation. All the same reason as Robert's. 90-foot range, action to cast, 1 minute concentration. So the minimum damage that you're going to do is half of 8d6 of 46, which is not huge, but the upside to it is every turn you get to deal the additional 46 if they fail a saving throw. So over the course of, like you said, just you cast it, they take the 8d6, and then if they fail their saving throw on their turn, they take an additional 4. That's probably going to be the most amount of damage to a single target that anything on this list can do. Unfortunately, the downside is large in that they get a saving throw from it every turn, but the potential is just so high. If this lasts, 2 or 3 turns, which is not unreasonable, you can just destroy a target. It's crazy damage. Also, it is a fantastic visual. They just erupt into flame, and I imagine them as like just kind of running around trying to like pat the fire out on their body, but they can't because it can't be extinguished by non-magical means.
Yeah, I agree. All right, my number 2, and this one was a tough one for me to put on here because, and I'm just going to go ahead and say the reason why. The biggest downside to this is it's only for Rangers. And we know how we both feel. It's Conjure Volley.
Yep.
64 possible total, the ceiling of damage. It's one of the highest ones on here. It's 150-foot range, 40-foot radius, and a 20-foot high cylinder. You shoot a magical or non-magical bullet or throw a non-magical javelin into the air, and then it duplicates itself into like 100 and just rains down on them, which is a really cool visual. And each creature has to make a dexterity saving throw. If they fail it, it's 8d8 damage of the type of thing that was thrown. So it's piercing, slashing, whatever that you threw or shot is what it is. And then they take half as much on a success. Again, the only thing is it's for the Ranger class only.
Yeah. Spells that I know are Ranger only spells, I just don't even look at.
I had to.
My number 1, no surprise. I assume it's Robert's as well. Cone of Cold.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll just go ahead and say
It's an action to cast. It creates a 60-foot cone, which is a massive cone. If one of your party members happens to be in the cone, they're going to be in trouble. But other than that, there's just no downside to it. A creature makes a Constitution saving throw, takes 8d8 cold damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful save. Additionally, if it kills the target, they are frozen solid as an ice statue until they are thawed out, which is just awesome.
I'm not even going to.
If this hits more than one creature, which presumably it's going to with a 60-foot cone, it is unquestionably the most damage that you can deal at level 5.
Yes, and I'm not even going to say what mine is because I agreed with you. I'm just going to do the little thing where it says it together. But yeah, everything you said, and I think my favorite part, it might have still been in my top 5 if it was only like 5d8, just because they get turned into a statue or ice sculpture until thawed. That's just so cool. And I can only imagine a barbarian running up and hacking through it and exploding.
Absolutely.
For an intimidation effect on other creatures. So yeah,
absolutely. If you're like fighting, I don't know, a wyvern or something that flies, and you just cone of cold it out of the air, and it just immediately turns to ice and falls and just smashes on the ground. It's just a cool spell, and it's crazy damage.
Yeah. So, well, cool, man. That was the only one we had together, and we had some different ones too. Usually we've got the same ones placed different places.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, we were both thinking about it a little bit differently on this round. But yeah, a lot of the utility possibilities for every spell that we pretty much talked about, with the exception of Cone of Cold. It's just a straight damage spell. It doesn't do anything else. But everything else, I just like last week when we were talking about cast a Wall of Fire in the 20-foot radius, and then cast a Gravity Sinkhole and put half of it inside that and then suck them right into the fire if they fail, like all that kind of stuff. Like now, again, like I said last time, I'm starting to think of it and be like, how can I build my character to use these most effectively, as it gets higher up. So, well, Mike, I want to say thank you, unless you've got something else to say about these spells.
No, I think we covered it all.
Thanks for being here. This should be up on Thursday if all goes well. I'm got work all this week, so it'll be late night editing. But yeah, for people watching, thanks for watching. If it is on as a podcast, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with top 10 level 6 damage spells. Everybody have a great Labor Day weekend, which is past now. I don't know what my brain's going on. We're recording this on Labor Day. How's that?
Yeah.
So happy Labor Day, sons of bitches. All right. Well, guys, y'all have a great rest of the day. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.
Peace.